that ain't right. We're not here today to get a glimpse of the most popular grassroots presidential candidate in history. We're not here to be close to his celebrity status. We're here for the movement Bernie Sanders began decades ago. And it's a movement he's not wavered from for 5 decades. His movement is for the people and by the people. And as he says, not me, us. For decades, the usual politics, the business as usual politicians have put us on a train and told us to pull down the shades, and they have told us we are moving forward. We are not moving forward, we're moving backward, and that ain't right. It's not that the billionaire class doesn't want to pay more taxes. The billionaire class doesn't want to pay any taxes. The Sanders revolution has the American oligarchs shaking in their Gucci loafers. The exploitation of students and the workers is coming to an end. The hardest working generation of Americans has been lectured to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Most of the self-righteous lecturers got their education when tuition was $11 a credit hour and the most expensive textbook was $25. Today, you need a month's wages to buy 2 textbooks. I know, I still teach. Well, we're going to shake the ground, and we're going to bend the trees. We're going to spread the Sanders revolution. We're going to save a neglected and dying planet with the Green New Deal. We're going to demand worker justice through the right of all workers to unionize. We're going to bring wage justice by ensuring the minimum wage is a living wage and not the lowest benchmark set by the employer to keep your labor from being called slavery. We're going to give every American health care, not access to health care. We're going to champion racial justice and build a nation where everyone is judged only by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin or who they love. You have heard it's too hard, it's too fast, it's too expensive. Well, let me remind you, President John F. Kennedy said, we choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. No, we will not sit down, we will not shut up, and we will not continue to pay up. This revolution says we can, we will. We're going to win this fight. We have our commander-in-chief, and you are his generals in the fight to make America great and wonderful, kind, compassionate, and save a planet. We will win because the revolution looks like you, and this is what democracy looks like. Please welcome Eli Newsom.
Much better. Hello and welcome all, and thank you so much for coming to this event. It is vitally important that us citizens engage with the democratic process and members of our government, regardless of anyone's political gain or outcome. Each of us here is making our community a better place just by being willing to ask questions and listen, so thank you all, truly. My name is Eli Newsom, and I am a first-year student here at Simpson College. I am from Denver, Colorado, where I grew up as the child of 2 public school teachers. I remember when my brother and I were little, our parents would take several extra jobs on top of teaching, like DJing at weddings, playing gigs at bars in Denver, and cashiering over summers because 2 teacher salaries have never been enough to support a family of 4. I watched profit-driven standardized test companies come into our schools and disregard student and teacher well-being just because it made them and their shareholders some extra money. I watched my mom go into medical debt and pay bill after bill for a surgery preventing her from getting ovarian cancer. And my dad pay an exorbitant amount of money for an ambulance ride to the hospital for a broken shoulder. I remember being a child and looking around and thinking, this is wrong. And the more I grew, the more I realized I was right. In 2008, we heard the message of hope and change, even in the looming financial crisis. But over the next 11 years, we got sold out. Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and therefore our imperialist affairs, received significant financial and policy support, not teachers and workers and farmers and nurses. We found out the hard way that a message of hope and change is not enough. And we can go nowhere without a dream, but to make that dream a reality, we need to be able to take our future into our own hands. To fight for someone, to elect someone into office who will fight for us with more than just words. We need to keep that fight alive in our own lives. And Bernie Sanders embodies that fight. He has been here for us, warning us of climate change, fighting powerful corporations, protecting our queer communities and allies, bolstering union membership and influence, and making healthcare accessible since before my parents were born. Bernie knows that our fight doesn't end at the Iowa caucuses, or on November 3rd, 2020, or on November 5th, 2024, because this isn't about elections. This isn't about how our parties have failed us. This isn't about how our democracy has failed us, or how capitalism has failed us, even though all of that is true. This is about us, our lives, our friends, our family, our schools, our homes, our jobs, our environment. The time is now to rise up and fight. The political revolution is happening all around us right now. Thank you. And with that, it is my honor to introduce Chris Dixon with NNU, the National Nurses United.
Hello, my fellow Iowans. My name is Chris Dixon, and I have been a registered nurse for more than 3 decades. I'm a proud member of National Nurses United and also proud to provide bedside care in Des Moines. I'm a long-time Bernie Sanders supporter, including when our union endorsed Bernie 4 years ago and joined him on his campaign trail. And our national nurses endorsement for Bernie for president in 2020 race just happened a few weeks ago. I'm so very pleased to talk to my fellow Iowans about why nurses have returned to the campaign trail to support our friend and campaign and champion of so many causes we hold dear, and that's Senator Bernie Sanders. National Nurses United has a slogan, vote nurses' values, and there is no candidate who better embodies nurses' values than Bernie. As a nurse, I've devoted my life to caring for my patients and providing them the support, care, and protection they need every day, including in their darkest hours and their most vulnerable times. Nurses see every day how our patients, even our patients with health insurance, suffer needlessly because they can't afford the care they need. Some of our diabetic patients lose limbs, and some of our cancer patients die because they can't afford preventative care and because the insurance companies deny them the care they need. And 30 million people have no health insurance whatsoever. Millions of families in America have to choose between paying for rent, food, or medication. 1/3 of all GoFundMe campaigns go for medical bills. Well, it doesn't have to be this way. As nurses, we are committed to advocating for our patients, so that everyone gets the highest quality of care they deserve. That's why for decades, the nurses have been leading the grassroots movement to win guaranteed health care as a human right with Medicare for all. Yeah. Medicare for all means simply that everyone will be able to see the doctor they want and seek care at the hospital they want. There will be no insurance premiums, no deductibles, no co-payments, because there will no longer be the health insurance companies profiteering off of patients' pain and suffering. We will eliminate the profiteering by the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry, and we'll have a healthcare system that is actually about healthcare, not profits. And we will be able to rationally deal with the escalating crisis in rural healthcare in this country, where hospitals and needed services like delivering babies are closing left and right, and the escalating crisis in poor communities in our urban areas where hospitals also have been closing, leaving so many of us high and dry. And you know what? We could do that by spending less money as a country than we currently do now, because we will eliminate the insurance companies' profits and bloated bureaucracy. You heard me right. We will, as a country, be able to provide care to everyone and actually spend less than we do now. So the question isn't what some in the media have been asking: how are we going to afford that? The question really should be, what are we going to do with all the extra money? And you know who's been with us all along? Bernie Sanders. For decades, Bernie has shown us time and time again that he shares our determination to make sure that health care is a basic human right. Bernie knows that Medicare for all is the only solution to guarantee health care for everyone, at the same time control away the runaway cost our country spends on health care. We are proud that through the Nurses Campaign for Medicare for All, Bernie's passionate advocacy in the Senate, and grassroots activism throughout the U.S., that Medicare for All is now a top issue in the 2020 presidential race. As union nurses, we also support Bernie because he is leading all the candidates on his platform to restore the rights of workers to organize unions. We understand that it is through our union power that we nurses are able to advocate for our patients without fear of retaliation by our hospital managers. Bernie understands the struggles of the poor and the working class because that is his own background. He is one of us, the hardworking 99%. Bernie understands the dangers of corporations and the millionaire, billionaire class. He knows how they exploit workers with complete disregard for human rights, civil rights, or safety unless they are checked. Bernie understands that it's union power, collective worker power, that keeps employers in check. Bernie is with us in calling for an end to right to work laws and at-will employment. He understands the right of all workers to strike must be protected, pensions must be protected, and the federal minimum wage must be raised to, at the very least, $15 an hour. We know that Bernie is dedicated to rebuilding a labor movement that we see is growing with determined spirit. And we know all too well there are strong forces working to destroy that spirit. We need someone who is an organizer-in-chief, who will do what needs to be done to protect workers' rights from the 1% that keep amassing more and more wealth. We need someone who will support and protect workers as they use their collective power to shape not only their workplaces, but to push forward policies and legislation that will enrich all people living in the United States. And Bernie Sanders is that candidate. In 2016, I made a trip across Iowa with Bernie. I was with him as we met with people from all walks of life, teachers, farmers, students, factory workers, office workers, union workers. And as I watched as their faces changed and began to light up as they listened to Bernie, I could see how his enthusiasm became their enthusiasm. I saw how the belief that working people have the power to make this country work for everyone because their belief that they can make the changes that will lift us all up. We don't support Bernie because we support his issues. We support Bernie because he supports our issues. And that change happens from the bottom up when we all, friends, families, neighbors, co-workers, join together in a common purpose for the good of our communities and our country. When Bernie is president, nurses and all working people will have a powerful ally in the White House. Nurses know it's time to elect Bernie Sanders the next president of the United States. Let's make this happen. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce our ally, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming out this afternoon. And let me thank those who have already spoken. Sylvia Pellegrino, Dr. Yoni Libby, Ellie Newson, and Chris Dixon. Thank you very much for what you've said. What I want to do is just do a format a little bit different than I usually do, because I want to involve you in the discussion. I don't want to give you a long speech. I'll limit it to 3 hours. I want to touch on, there's so many issues out there, but I want to touch on some of the very essential issues and get your thoughts on it. And I want to start off with the issue of money and politics. If you run for president of the United States, or for governor, or for senator for that matter, it's an expensive proposition. My concern right now is that, especially since Citizens United, what we have seen is a major corruption of our political process and the concept of democracy, meaning one person, one vote. What most of us believe, if we were the world here or America here, and we were arguing about an issue, people would raise their hand and the majority wins. Everybody has the same vote. But increasingly in American politics, that is not the case. So you have a handful of billionaires who are literally spending hundreds of millions of dollars in all kinds of ways through dark money and super PACs or whatever, electing candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful. And that concerns me very much, because that whole process undermines American democracy, which is why you end up in Congress with a Republican leadership talking about tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You go out on the streets of Indianola or any place else, nobody believes in that. Not 5% of the American people, but that is the ideology, because that is what the moneyed interest want. So first point I want to make is we have got to deal with the impact of money in politics. That means, to my mind, overturning this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. It also means public funding of elections. It also means working aggressively to end voter suppression. What democracy is supposed to mean is that I'm a candidate, you're a candidate. You get up there and you say, this is what I believe, and I want your support. Not, I can't get that part of the state's support, or I can't get people of color's support. I'm going to suppress the vote. That is a cowardly undermining of what democracy is supposed to be about. So let me tell you, when we are in the White House, our view will be that if you're 18 years of age in the United States, you vote. End of discussion. And in that regard, what I am enormously proud to tell you this, that our campaign has rewritten the history books in terms of campaign finance. As of today, we have received for our campaign some 4.2 million contributions coming from 1.2 million Americans, which is more than any candidate in the history of the United States of America. So unlike some candidates, we don't have and never will have a super PAC. Unlike some candidates, I will not spend my time going to wealthy people's homes raising large sums of money from a handful of millionaires. Our average contribution, if you can believe it, is $18. Our major source of employment who contributes to our campaign are not Wall Street bankers, not CEOs, they are teachers. They are workers at Amazon, workers at Target, workers at Walmart. What we are running uniquely in American history is a campaign of the working class, by the working class, and for the working class of this country. Second issue I want you to think about. A lot of debate going on about health care in America. 4 years ago, I came to Iowa and I said, I believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege. That it is an international embarrassment that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all of our people, while at the same time, we are spending twice as much per person on health care, $11,000 for every man, woman, and child, twice as much as any other major country on earth. My view, and I'm glad that all over this country, more and more people have accepted that view, is that we need to move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. And what that program means is there are no more premiums. There are no more co-payments. There are no more deductibles. You all know what a deductible is? One of the craziest things that I've ever heard in my life. It says, oh, you have insurance, but by the way, you're gonna have to spend the first $5,000 or $10,000 out of your own pocket. Oh, I don't have $5,000 or $10,000. Well, sorry, you can't go to the doctor. It's a totally absurd proposition. We are also under Medicare for All going to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, make certain that nobody in America pays more than $200 a year for the prescription drugs that they need. Now, there has been a lot of discussion about how you're going to pay for Medicare. Healthcare is an expensive proposition. Well, the first question to ask is, how are we paying for it right now? How do we pay for it? Well, for a start, we got 87 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. Not a very good situation when you're spending twice as much per capita as the people of any other country. We have 30,000 people a year dying. Why are they dying in America? Because they don't go to the doctor when they should, because they're uninsured or underinsured. And here is the most, I think, cruel thing. It is extremely cruel when we talk about 500,000 people a year going bankrupt for medically related debt. No, it's not right. That means, just think about it for a second. Think about the cruelty and the absurdity. You go into the doctor's office, you're diagnosed with cancer or some other serious health issue. You got a lot on your mind. What kind of treatment do I get? What kind of medicine do I get? What doctor do I get? What hospital do I go? That's what you're worrying about. How do I get well? Can I get well? But at the same time, you're going to have to worry about, oh my God, I'm going to end up with a $100,000, $200,000 bill from the hospital and from doctors. How am I going to pay that? I can't pay that. I'm a working class person. I got $5,000 in the bank. How am I going to pay a $200,000 bill? Oh, I'm going bankrupt. Why? Because I was diagnosed with a serious illness. That should not be happening in the United States of America. And that's what we're going to eliminate. Now, my opponents, and on this issue, I've got a lot of opponents, like almost everybody in the establishment. So we got the healthcare industry. They don't like this proposal. Oh, it's a terrible, terrible proposal. It'll disrupt the healthcare system. Oh, who are the folks who are running those 30-second ads here in Iowa telling you how bad Medicare for All is? You know who they are? They are the insurance companies and the drug companies. They love the current system for good reason. They made $100 billion in profits last year. You made $100 billion in profits. You think it's a pretty good system. Their CEOs make enormous compensation packages, get enormous compensation packages. They're doing just fine. Meanwhile, 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe because we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Why is that? Oh, maybe it has something to do with the fact that the pharmaceutical industry has spent $4 billion in the last 20 years on lobbying and campaign contributions. So today you have a situation where it's not Congress that regulates the drug companies who regulate Congress. Now, how do we pay for our health care right now? It's a long story, and I'll kind of abbreviate it, but I'll say this. If you are the average family in America, right in the middle of our economy, you make about $60,000 a year. You are paying $12,000 a year for your health care in terms of premiums, co-payments, prescription drug costs, out-of-pocket expenses. That's 20% of your income. So all those people who say, oh, Bernie, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all? Take a look at what's going on right now. Take a look at the millions and millions of working class families who are paying 15, 20, 25% of their limited incomes for health care right now. What we are proposing is a much simpler proposal and a much fairer proposal. What we are saying for comprehensive health care that includes dental care, hearing aids, eyeglasses, and home health care. What we are proposing is a 4% income tax. Remember, all premiums, co-payments, out-of-pocket are gone. 4% personal income tax exempting the first $29,000. So that means if you're that family in the middle, you make $60,000, you're paying 4% of $31,000, roughly $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care. Pretty good deal, I would think. So for all my critics who don't want to take on the healthcare industry, you go tell your constituents that Bernie's proposal will cost the average American worker $1,200 a year. Their proposal will cost $12,000 a year. I think we got the better deal here. And the reason we can do that is, number one, we eliminate the $100 billion in profiteering from the drug companies and the insurance companies. And then second of all, this system is so Byzantine and complicated and crazy. We have thousands of separate insurance programs in America. You got a $5,000 deductible, you got a $10,000. You're in this network, you're in that one. Your premium is this, you have employer-based, you're on Medicare, you're on Medicaid. And trying to administer that system is costing us some $500 billion a year. And by the way, doctors, nurses are going nuts trying to deal with insurance companies, as are patients. Anyone here deal with an insurance company? There you go. All right, trying to fight for the policy, for the coverage that you thought you were entitled to. Well, you're paying for the guy at the other end of the phone who's telling you you're not covered. That's pretty crazy. So our system, and it's not a radical idea. I didn't come up with this idea in the middle of the night. What they do in Canada, what they do all over the world. Canada, you got a little card. You go to the doctor, that's it. You don't take out your wallet. You don't take out your credit card. You are paid for your health care through a tax system as we are proposing, okay? That eliminates an enormous amount of administrative bureaucracy, which ends up saving the system many hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Furthermore, we take on the greed and the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, all right? We are spending, a couple of months ago, 3-4 months ago, I went to Canada from Detroit with people who have diabetes. We bought insulin for 1/10 of the price. You got it? Same product, same company, 1/10 of the price. Why is that? And the answer is, in this country, drug companies can charge anything they want, completely unregulated. Every other country in the world says, sorry, you're going to charge the people in our country a reasonable price. And that is what we are going to do. Four years ago, came to Iowa, and I proposed something which at that point was seemingly very radical idea. And that is that in a changing world, and in a changing economy, in a competitive global economy, we should rethink what public education in America means. And that is that free public education from K through 12 is no longer good enough, that we have to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And that means that we have to make sure that every person in this country who wants a higher education in a private school, in a public school, in a trade school, can leave school without debt. And we do that by expanding Pell Grants very significantly. We do that by expanding the work-study program and other financial aid. Bottom line is that if you want a higher education in America, you should be able to get it regardless of the income of your family. And the other thing that we do, and I'll tell you in a minute how we're going to pay for it. The other thing that we do is cancel all student debt in America. Now, some of my critics say, well, that's a very expensive idea. It sounds great. How are you going to pay for it? I'll tell you how we're going to pay for it. 11 years ago, against my vote, Congress bailed out the crooks on Wall Street. 2 years ago, Trump and his friends gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% in large profitable corporations. What we are proposing to pay for free tuition at public colleges and universities, a massive expansion in Pell Grants, work-study programs, canceling all student debt, we pay for that through a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. Last point I want to make before we open it up is an issue that worries me very, very much and should worry every person in this room, every person in this country, every person in this world. And that is that what the scientists are now telling us, the people who know the most about the issue, is that they have underestimated the speed and severity in which climate change is ravaging our country and the entire world. And what they are telling us, that it is possible by the end of the century, if we do not get our act together, that the planet Earth will be 5, 6, 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it is right now. And what that means is almost unimaginable. What that means is that rising sea levels will devour coastal communities in our country. Cities like Miami, Charleston, New York City will be underwater or partially underwater. Countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, good parts of those countries will be underwater. What it means is when our forests are dried up, we will have even more wildfires than we have seen with our own eyes in the last few years. You all know what's going on in California right now. You may not know that Australia is burning right now as well. Last summer in Europe, thousands of people died because they had the hottest summer in recorded history in France, Germany, UK, and so forth. What we're looking at is extreme weather disturbances, massive rainfalls, putting Houston underwater and resulting in farmers not being able to have the time they need to grow the crops that they need. It means shorter planting seasons because farmers will find that their fields are in mud and drought is not very productive if you want a good crop. What the United Nations is telling us is that a result of climate change, we can be looking at hundreds of millions of people who are climate refugees. That means if you live in a community where there's no water that you can drink, where you can't grow your crops, you're gonna have to pick up and move. And when we're talking about hundreds of millions of people on the move, you're talking about increased danger of international conflict. Now that is the reality. It is a very sad state of affairs, it really is, that we have an ignorant person in the White House who not only does not recognize the reality of climate change, Trump thinks it's a hoax, but in fact is exacerbating the problem by encouraging more fossil fuel production. So, what do? We do everything humanly possible to transform our energy system and the world's energy system away from fossil fuels to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And in that regard, I am very proud to tell you that we have introduced the most comprehensive, far-reaching climate change proposal ever introduced by any candidate for president in the history of this country. And my critics say, Bernie, it's a very expensive proposal. They're right, it is. We pay for it, but it's a very expensive proposal. It's $16 trillion, a lot of money. But I want you to think about what the alternative is. What is the alternative to saving the planet? How much is too much to spend to make sure that our children grandchildren, and future generations live in a world that is healthy and is habitable. Now, our plan is based on the Green New Deal. And what that means, we believe that as we transform our energy system, we can create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. There's an enormous amount of work to be done. Bottom line is that in terms of climate change, we're going to have to be bold and we're going to have to be tough, and we're going to have to tell the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And as president, I intend to do that. But here is what makes a very difficult issue even more difficult. And that is, it is not an American issue. We can tomorrow do all the right things in transforming our energy system, but if China and Russia and India and Pakistan and Europe do not come on board, the world will be in very bad shape. So what I promise you, that as President of the United States, I will not be like Trump, denying the reality of climate change. I will not be encouraging more fossil fuel. I will be helping to lead the people of the world to stand up and fight for a planet that is healthy for their kids. And the message that I will take around the world, and I can't guarantee you that it will succeed, the message that I will take is that maybe, just maybe, in this critical moment in world history, that instead of spending $1.8 trillion every year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we should pool our resources and use that money to fight our common enemy, which is climate change. All right, let me throw out a question to you, and then you throw out a question to me. The impact of climate change is increasingly apparent. I mean, and what I want to get you nervous about, if you're not nervous already, see, my wife always told me that I totally depress everybody, every place I go. Got to hand out tranquilizers at the gate here. But it's not just what the scientists are saying. It's, you know, when you look at climate, you're looking at thousands and hundreds of thousands and trends of millions of years. But what is incredible is we are seeing changes in our own lifetimes. I mean, just think for a minute. Think about the devastation that Puerto Rico experienced, that the Bahamas experienced, that New Orleans experienced, Hurricane Sandy, billions of dollars of damage on the East Coast. Think about the forest fires, the wildfires that we're seeing all over the world today. Think about the fact that fish provides protein for hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, and fish are dying in the ocean as the ocean becomes more acidified and warmer. People are seeing this. They're writing about it every single day. Why is it, do you think, that you have leaders here in Iowa and around the country who still refuse to acknowledge the reality of climate change? Why is that? How could that be? Raise your hand, raise your hand, raise your hand. Let's get some discussion. Ma'am, stand up if you could, please. There's a mic coming for you. Bill.
If they're not going to back something that isn't going to pay them something.
Do you think it's a question of campaign contributions and the power of money?
In the power of money, yeah.
Yep, okay. Bill, make sure that mic is on. Okay, more discussion on climate change. How can it be that so many leaders and other people, I mean, if I'm a farmer here in Iowa, I got to be concerned about climate change in terms of the quality and quantity of what I'm going to be producing. Why are people not dealing with that reality? Yes, ma'am. Misty's got a mic for you.
People believe stuff that just isn't true, and I think it's because of Fox News.
Okay. See, on this one, though, what is interesting, this is not a scientific debate anymore. The scientists are all acknowledging the reality of climate change and it's man-made. But now what people have to do is deny the reality of their own eyes. You know, if California is burning, if crop production in Iowa is going to go down because of torrential rain and mud on the fields, there has to be an explanation, all right? Any other thoughts on that? Yes, ma'am. A mic is coming. Bill, you got that?
It's working.
We got to get religion out of politics. You hear people standing at the pulpit saying, vote for this person because they're God sent, and they deny climate change because humans are not supposed to have that power that belongs to God.
Well, that's interesting.
And
Okay.
I've heard that over and over again, where people in the churches are campaigning and they're supposed to be nonprofit. You report it to the IRS and they don't listen.
That's interesting. Thank you. So people have a hard time believing that human beings and carbon emission can be doing what it is doing. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on climate change? What would you like to see? I mean, I've given you an overview. What would you like to see a Congress and a president doing on climate change? I got a hand over there. Yes, sir.
One thing that can be done is Trump's passed a bunch of small refinery exemptions to damage the renewable fuel standard.
Yes.
And I hope as a president you would commit to making that a
I
transparent
would.
process
Thank you.
and
Yes,
reducing it.
absolutely. We're looking at all forms of sustainable energy. And by the way, Iowa deserves a lot of credit for being one of the leaders in the country in terms of wind energy. And you're right, biofuels is another tool that we have, and we've got to expand that and improve it. All right. I want to go to another issue, if I might. Healthcare. My colleagues often tell me on the floor of the United States Senate, we have the best healthcare system in the world. All right, tell me if that's true, or if it's not true, why it is not true. What are some of the experiences that you as patients have bumped into in terms of the healthcare system? I see a hand right here. Bill, stand up, ma'am. Just give us your name if you could.
Martha Biner. My son's lived in Canada for almost 20 years. He's raising a family there. 4 children, they've had everything. They've had skin grafts and head injuries and broken bones and every illness a child can get. And they have wonderful health care. There is no waiting. There's urgent care if it's Sunday. I take those kids to the doctor, and all I do is show them the card. And my son figures he pays about $2,000 in a federal tax, a VAT tax. We ought to talk about VAT tax in this country. And he's getting some medical care that's worth at least $25,000 in premium payments he'd be paying if he worked in this country.
Okay, thank you. So how does that happen? I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border in Burlington, Vermont. What the woman said is true. I've been up there. When you go in Canada, if somebody has a serious illness, major surgery, whatever it is, you're in the hospital for a month, what's the bill when you leave the hospital? Zero. And then it happens that while her son, of course, pays taxes, it ends up that they spend half as much per person on health care as we do, because they don't have the joy of having to deal with the private insurance industry. And I know your son is really upset about that. That's a joke. It's a joke. I know that. All right. All right. So, all right, more discussion. Thank you for that. And again, you know, you go abroad and you say to people, well, in our country, people go bankrupt when they get sick. Literally, they don't even know what you're talking about. It's inconceivable to them that people could go bankrupt because they got sick. And yet we have a Republican Party fiercely defending the system, and you got the Democratic establishment defending this system with some modest modifications. But this is what I believe. Way back from when Teddy Roosevelt, 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, Teddy Roosevelt talked about health care as a right, universal health care. Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about it. Harry Truman talked about it. John F. Kennedy talked about it. Lyndon Johnson talked about it. Obama talked about it. Carter talked about it. You know, after 100 years of talk, maybe we have the guts to take on the healthcare industry and pass Medicare for all. All right, that's my rant. Your thoughts? More experience on dealing with the wonderful healthcare system. Ma'am, right here. Yes, you. Stand up.
Hi, so I am a child of a single parent and have 4 younger brothers. And one thing I remember when I was younger is that my mother could never afford health care for all 5 of us. And so we were relied very heavily on Iowa insurance and Hawkeye and Medicare and all of that stuff. And when she lost her job, we lost our health care, and my brother got really sick. And so she had to pay out of pocket, out of college tuitions for my brothers and myself. And so having universal health care is really important to lower income, higher income, just everybody. And it's really important for me in deciding on who to vote for.
Thank you very much. And hers, what's your name, ma'am? Shia? Shia's story is told all over this country every day. And Shia, that is why 30,000 people in this country every year die. Because if you get sick and you can't afford your co-payment, you can't afford the fee at the doctor's office, you hesitate to go. And then sometimes by the time you walk into the office, it's too late. This is an insane and cruel system that you've described. Other thoughts on healthcare, personal experiences? Yes, sir? We gotta.
It's hard enough to get coverage for medical care, but coverage that is adequate for mental health care, it's extremely difficult to get.
Absolutely and positively correct. We have a mental health crisis in this country, and for ordinary people, it is very, very hard to find the mental health treatments that they need. If you're rich, you can find it. But if you're working class, middle class, lower income, it is very, very difficult. And I want everybody to understand, because every time I go to an event like this, people say, well, will Medicare for all cover X, Y, or Z? The answer is, it will. Last I heard, mental health issues are healthcare issues. But I do have to say that the issue with regard to healthcare is not only passing Medicare for all, making sure everybody can get to a doctor, it is making sure we get doctors and nurses and psychologists and dentists to the areas of the country where we need them. You know, we should not be shutting down rural hospitals. We should be expanding healthcare facilities in rural Americas. And by the way, just as an aside, one of the things I've been working very hard on ever since I've been in the Senate, with some success, is expanding community health centers all across this country. The good news is that, as I understand it, the House will shortly pass a major, major expansion of community health centers that I have helped sponsor. I think we can stand a good chance to get it through the House. That'll mean rural clinics all over America. Please do your best to get your senators to support that. All right, let me switch gear and get your views on education. Okay? Not just higher education. I want you to be thinking about the obvious reality. It's kind of rhetorical to say it, but the young people are the future of America, right? All right, so that's not a hard concept to deal with. Do we treat the young people from childcare through graduate school with the respect that they deserve in this country? That's my question. Who wants to answer that one? Young woman in the back. Okay.
Hi.
Your name, please?
I'm Angela.
Hey, Angela.
I'm a student, and my little brother, who's right behind you, is about to be in college.
He ain't so little.
I know.
He's growing up, Angela.
I know. It's terrifying. But my older brother, yeah. So my older brother is a senior in college. I'm a junior. He's about to be a freshman next year. So my parents are about to have 3 children in college at once. And yeah, so he and
Be nice to your parents.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yes, absolutely. But Vinny is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he has all these opportunities to go to all these schools, but because of the money, he might not be able to go to some of these places where he could become, I mean, who knows? And I hate the idea of his, what's the word I'm thinking of? Opportunities being limited because of he has to go and pay $60,000 a year for an education.
Okay. Vinny, do you want to say a word on that? Your sister put you on the spot. She says you're really smart. He denies it. He says he's not. Okay. Other thoughts? Yeah, sir, right here. Yes. One person wearing a suit in the room. All right.
My name is Nathaniel Gavronsky, and I look into this a lot. I work with constituent services, and this is one of the things that come up. Iowa has the highest graduation rate at 91.2% in the nation, but when it comes to higher education, the completion rate, we fall down into the low 40s. And part of that problem is a lot of our students aren't able to deal with the challenges in school, and their soft skills they're not prepared to handle all the aspects of higher education. So having access to higher education, being able to pay for it, is only part of the problem of completion of that higher degree. I would like to hear some more discussion on how we're going to better prepare students for the real world and for the job market. Thank you.
Good. All right, that's a good question, but let me get some more comments and we'll get back to that. Let me ask you this one. And Angela kind of raised the issue. If Angela's family was extremely wealthy, and I'm assuming that you're not, Vinny would not have to be making those choices. What do we think? Do we think that everybody in this country, regardless of the income of their family, should be able to go and get the higher education? Again, by the way, it's not just college. Trade schools or other types of education which will give them the skills that they need to go out and make a decent job. Should that be open to all people regardless of income? All right, I think so. And here's what is interesting, and some of you may not know this, that 50 years ago, here in the United States, some of the great public universities and colleges, California, New York, you know how much tuition was? That's right. It was virtually zero. So what has happened over the years is that states have cut back on their funding for public colleges and universities, and the difference has fallen onto the students and their families, and tuition is soaring. And then you have the phenomenon of high college debt. But I think I was, to tell you a funny story, I was in a meeting in Washington a few years ago, and I said, well, the idea of free tuition at college is not such a radical idea. It exists in countries like Finland. Some kid jumps up and he says, Senator, you're wrong. In Finland, it's not free. They pay us to go to college. All right. But, picking up on Angela's point with regard to her brother and multiply that a zillion times, is that we want our young people to get the very best education that they can so that they can, become the people that they want to become, and what we need as a society. We need doctors and scientists, and we need teachers. We need childcare workers. We need construction workers. We need a well-educated workforce, and if people cannot afford to get the education they need, it not only hurts the individual, but it hurts us as a society as well. All right, yeah, see a hand over there, sir?
Yeah, my name is Tom, and I just wanted to add that I think what happens between birth and age 5 before kindergarten is critically important. Early childhood education and child care needs to be part of our educational system.
Thank you so much.
And well compensated.
Sorry, your first name? Tom? All right, Tom hit the nail on the head. Every psychologist who studies the issue understands that the most important years of human development are 0 through 4, 0 through 5. And yet, think about it. We give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the wealthy and large corporations. We are now spending more than the next 10 nations combined on the military. We provide hundreds of billions of dollars a year in subsidies and tax breaks to the fossil fuel industry, which is destroying our planet. And yet, in Iowa, in Vermont, all over this country, it is very difficult for a working class person to find the quality, affordable childcare or pre-K education they need. So what we have proposed is kind of a revolution in education. And it means that we will have universal, affordable childcare with well-paid, well-trained childcare instructors. It means that we are going to invest very heavily in public education in this country, especially in Title I schools, schools serving lower income kids. It means that no child in America will go hungry. It means, and this is maybe the most important issue, we have got to decide as a nation what our priorities are, what we believe in. I happen to believe that education is something that we should be involved in from the day we're born to the day we die. That's what makes us human beings. So we have got to respect education and respect educators. I was in New Hampshire a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how different it is here in Iowa. And I was in a meeting with teachers, and they said, Bernie, do you know that in some school districts in New Hampshire, which is not a poor state, teachers begin at $28,000 a year? All over this country, in South Carolina, teachers are leaving, who have years and years of experience, are leaving the profession in droves because they have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make a living, taking money out of their own pockets for school supplies. Think about the future of a nation which does not cherish and prize education and our educators. So to the young people here, I hope very much that you will think about becoming teachers and childcare workers. We desperately need you, and my job, if elected president, is to make sure that all teachers in this country earn at least $60,000 a year. Because I want the young people here at Simpson, any place else, to be saying, you know what? Teaching is an enormously important and gratifying profession. Can't do much more important work than being a teacher. And I want young people to say, I am proud to be going into the teaching profession, and I'm going to earn a decent living when I do that. I don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs to be a teacher. Okay, do I see a hand? Yes, sir, right here. Yep.
Hi, my name is Lou, and I guess what really sticks with me about education is the cultural stigma against community colleges and trade workers and like trade schools, because not in the system that we have now, not everybody's going to be able to afford university, and we need teachers and mechanics and cleaners and servers and cooks. And to not only like shame the people who want to go into these professions, but then also deny them the resources that they need when they go into those professions, whether by choice or by not, it's ridiculous.
And it's counterproductive. Lou, thank you. I think that's well stated. A couple of years ago, I don't know if you study what goes on in Germany. Have you, Lou? Okay. A couple of years ago, we brought the ambassador from Germany to the United States, and I wanted him to talk about their apprenticeship programs. And in Germany, they are doing very much of what you're talking about. They have done away or tried to do away with the stereotyping that, oh, I'm going to become a baker, or I'm going to become a furniture maker, or I'm going to become a construction worker, and somehow that is less important than somebody who graduates college. So what they have done, and they have a very strong program of apprenticeships. You're going to high school, you are paid to learn how to become a baker or a furniture maker, or whatever it may be. And a significant number of their people do that. We have in this country, if you're a plumber, a skilled plumber, I don't know about Iowa, but in Vermont you make a pretty good living. An automobile mechanic makes a good living. A carpenter makes a good living. A lot of enormously important work that has to be done in our society. We need workers to do that. They need that opportunity to get the education and the training they need in order to do that work and make a decent living. Your point is absolutely right on. Okay, I see a hand right here. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Natalie, and I have a 4-year-old, and my childcare costs more than my mortgage. And it costs so much money that I can't afford to have her in preschool because you have to add that on top of what you pay for daycare. And there's no way to get her there because it's 3 hours a day, and we both work full-time, and we have no ability to get transportation there. So I feel like she's already behind because we don't have the money to pay for it.
She's a beautiful little girl. I could see that from here. Natalie raises exactly, in many ways, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in some cases, child care is more expensive than public colleges or community colleges. All right? But it gets back to the point that Natalie made. Natalie's, you know, sometimes some of my colleagues are still living in the 1950s when daddy went to work and mommy stayed home with the kids. I'll tell you a story, if I might. A number of years ago when I was in the House, somebody helped me write a speech. And the person said, 80% of mothers with kids under 5 are in the workforce. I can't remember exactly what it was, something like that. And I said, that's ridiculous. Go back and check your facts. Of course, it turned out to be correct. So all over this country, you have moms and dads working. Who's taking care of the kids? Can they find high quality and affordable childcare so when they go to work, they're feeling pretty good about where their kid is at? And the answer is, from coast to coast, the answer is we cannot. Working class families cannot find that quality childcare. We are going to change that. Okay, I see a young man over there. All right.
Hi, my name is Riken, and I just wanted to know the dropout line of high school to the dropout line from high school to prison.
Okay, that's called the school to prison pipeline, I think is what it is. And that's a whole other issue we didn't even spend any time on today because I wanted to focus on some other issues, but I want to deal with that issue because it's enormously important. When we talk about an agenda that works for working class people, which is what our campaign is about, it means that we must bring fundamental reform to a broken and racist criminal justice system. And what it means, and I'll be very brief in talking about our criminal justice program, is first of all, picking up on the young man's question, we should be investing in our young people in education and job training. rather than building more jails and having more incarceration. I'll give you an example of something, what I mean by that. Southern Vermont, I was down there a couple of years ago, and I talked to a principal of a high school, which is primarily a working class high school. And she said, Bernie, I love the kids in this school, and I am going to do everything I can to make sure that none of them drop out. Because if they drop out of school, the likelihood of them doing well in life is significantly reduced. And she says, I have hired mentors. I am available at 3 o'clock in the morning if a kid is having a problem with her parents or with a boyfriend or whatever it may be. Our job is to make sure that kids get the education that they need, are not falling through the cracks. If a kid drops out of high school without an education, without job training, there is a very strong likelihood that kid will end up doing dumb things and ending up in jail. So we're going to invest in our kids, in jobs and education, not more jails or incarceration. Second thing we're going to do is end private prisons and detention centers in America. We're going to end cash bail in America because many of you may not know it. You may not know it. There are 400,000 people in jail this moment. You know why they're in jail? Because they're poor and they cannot afford bail to get out of jail. They haven't been convicted of anything. You're arrested, not convicted, and you don't have the $500 for bail, you stay in jail. That is unbelievable. That is what took place in Charles Dickens' time. It is taking place right now. Other thing that we're going to do, and this is a big deal, is end the so-called war on drugs, which has been so destructive. And that means we are going to legalize marijuana in every state in this country. And we are going to expunge the records of those who have been arrested for the sale of marijuana. All right, I'm going to have to apologize because we're going to get on a plane to take us to Nevada, where it's a little bit warmer than it is here. All right. But let me just say this. All of you know that Iowa plays a very outsized role in the American political process. And I got to tell you, having been all over your state, that I have been impressed by the seriousness that the people of Iowa accept that very heavy responsibility. I suspect that many of the people in this room who are here today to hear me have heard other candidates, and that's a right thing to do. You're assessing. You want to make sure that you're voting